was a teacher for 4 years, so one thing that should notice about me is I've never turned my back on. But anyways, as an industrial hygienist, I specialize in air noise type things. And I work for Workplace Safety Consultation, which is the free part of OSHA. We have OSHA Enforcement on one side, which are the guys that knock on your door and say, hi, I'm Kuzj, I'm with OSHA, hope you're not doing anything today. And then there's the consultation side, which you have to invite us out, and we help you with whatever you need help with. Everything that I do is free, so all the air sampling and all the noise sampling and any training I do. Does cost you a cookie or two once in a while, but yeah, everything that we do is free. We have 16 different consultants that have various expertise. We have a ergonomist on staff. We have a lot of safety people. We have construction people. So if you need our help, give us a call. There's a nice colored glossy brochure for you with our phone number and kind of the things that we do. And I'm going to talk about some of the other things we do in a little bit. I got some slides about it. But remember, my job is to help you. And so if you have any questions, you can call me, send me an email, or just call the general number, which is actually listed on the last slide, and you will get a live person and can answer the question for you. And by the way, I get a lot of calls from people that say, it stinks in here, you know, it's going to kill me. What's this odor? Okay.
See, if I don't walk on my tiptoes though, it sounds like a horse calling.
A little bit.
Yeah, you did.
Okay. Excuse me for just a second.
There we go.
Is it working?
Yeah.
Is that a teacher? I got backup today.
And just FYI, the mic's over here.
All right. Okay, we talked about all that stuff. Basically what this says is that our mission at the Department of Labor and Industry is to make sure that every place is a safe and healthy place in Minnesota. For those of you that aren't from Minnesota, I'm sure other health departments and labor and industry departments have the same type of mission that we do. An OSHA presentation would not be an OSHA presentation without having a bunch of incredibly stupid slides to start off with. So here's one of my favorite ones. There's many things wrong in this one. In fact, I can't think of anything right. If things were to go wrong here, I could see potentially 5 fatalities like everybody in there. All right, this is not a good place to seek shade. What's actually holding up that front end loader are hydraulic arms and hydraulic hoses that are made out of rubber. And so if the rubber fails, they come down and. Oh, okay, can't hear me? And these guys will get squished. Okay, hopefully you don't have anything that looks like that in your facility. This is an energized box. So, I mean, those are a lot of those wires that are hanging out of there are live wires. That's not good. I like this picture. It looks really bad, doesn't it? What attracted me was the 20-foot flame that was coming out of that pipe. But that's actually not the bad part in this photo. The bad part is this guy standing on top of the rounded tank, and people have a tendency to slide off, and so you need to have fall protection if you're up on a tank like that. There is a really good one. Real ingenious how to hook up something to an electrical wire.
By the way, this black wire is the one where all the power is running through. And look how close it is to the gas line right here. I got another one that's very similar, except somebody has a cup food bag wrapped around it for insulation, and it's sitting in a puddle of water. All right, we talked about that. Everything I do is confidential, so nobody knows that I'm at your facility, and I can't tell anything. I can't tell anything but one about what I have done at your facility. So everything I do is up to you. You have to, I suggest things, and if you don't want to do it, that's fine. We have a safety grant program. We give away over $1 million every year to places that want to make improvements health and safety wise. So if you have some kind of project, you want to make some kind of upgrade in your building where it is safer for your employees, you can actually apply for a safety grant. Safety grants are designed to help smaller businesses. How many of you here have more than 20 employees? Very few veterinary clinics have more than 20 employees. So we specialize in smaller employers and high hazard industries. And the idea is that we get this money and we promote health and safety by helping you make your place a little safer and healthier by giving you some money to do it. It is a matching program, so you have to pay for half of whatever it is. And in order to get the money, you have to have someone say that your project is something that will benefit the facility health and safety wise. So that can come from an outside consultant. If you have the safety committee can make a recommendation. Does the Veterinary Association have anyone that goes out and does safety audits or anything of that sort? No? Okay. That's something I can do. If you want me to come out and look at something and make a recommendation, I was at a place yesterday, they were spraying stuff, really nasty stuff. They had a hokey spray booth. They're using half mask negative pressure respirators, and they probably should have been using something better than that. So all that stuff I'm putting in the report that says that, yeah, this is stuff that they probably should upgrade and maybe get a supplied air respirator. It's one of the ones with a airline going to the full face piece, and maybe something better than a 2x4 plastic spray booth. All right. And the last thing to be eligible for the safety grant is you have to have a workers' comp insurance, because the money actually comes from the workers' comp penalty fund. So, and you have to be able to financially do the project because we reimburse you the money. We don't give it to you ahead of time. So anyhow, we give out safety grants every 2 months. We generally get about 40 applicants every 2 months, and out of those 40, we give out 25, 30 safety grants. Next day is tomorrow. Sorry, probably won't get it in today, but so we have October 15th is the next deadline for applying for a safety grant. This is where you go, person to talk to, real easy process. It's all done online. It's like 6 pages of stuff. I could probably fill one out in an hour. It's really not that bad. If you want to take a look at it, just go to our website, www.dli.mn.gov, and type in safety grant in the search engine and get you to the right page. And for those of you that aren't from Minnesota, guess what? You don't qualify for a Minnesota safety grant. Sorry. Okay, we're going to talk to you about how OSHA enforcement shows up at your place. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about OSHA enforcement. They're broken up into 4 different areas. We have health people that are kind of like me, specialize in air and noise. We got discrimination. They have 3 people that work in the discrimination unit. We got probably 30 that are in safety, probably another 10 that are in construction over there. And I'll tell you a little bit about which each one does. The health people specialize in air and noise type things and radiation in Minnesota. Air and noise, radiation, temperature, and infectious agents in Minnesota. Once you get out of Minnesota, it's going to be a little different because the temperature and infectious agents are Minnesota rules. It's in the Minnesota right to know, and it's not in the federal HAZCOM. So for the people outside of Minnesota, their health people won't be looking at temperature or infectious agents. We've got a discrimination unit. They basically take a look at issues that are dealing with some kind of discipline of employees because of health and safety issues. You know, somebody gets fired because they complain about not having the proper type of gloves to work on something of that sort. Doesn't have anything to do with any other type of discrimination like the color of your hair or your eyes or how big your earlobes are or anything of that sort. Just health and safety stuff. Okay, construction people specialize in new construction, remodeling, and oddly enough, painting counts as construction. Got the safety people that handle everything else, which includes machines, machine guarding, fall protection, vehicle safety, safety programs, and electrical. So why does OSHA show up? Would OSHA show up because of that? The answer is maybe. It depends. If the driver got hurt, we got seriously hurt, went to the hospital, yeah, OSHA would show up, they do an accident investigation. If the employee complained that they have bad safety guarding for the forklift and allow them to drive off the loading dock, yeah, the OSHA would go investigate that. But if they didn't get hurt, no, they wouldn't go investigate it. How about if I told you that that's a 1.5 megaton nuclear warhead? Would OSHA go investigate that? No, they wouldn't. Wouldn't make any difference. That's not one, by the way. All right. This is why OSHA enforcement shows up. They show up if they see an imminent danger or somebody contacts them to say that there's something really bad going on. And if something goes wrong, somebody is going to get seriously hurt or die, like this guy walking on a 2x4 or 2x12 plank about 40 feet above the ground. Okay, that's what we call an imminent danger. As a consultant and working for OSHA enforcement, when I see stuff like this, I have to stop and talk with the people and tell them that that's really not a good idea. Yeah, probably should not be walking on a plank. They get reports about serious injuries and fatalities, and Minnesota OSHA investigates about 25 fatalities every year, and they have a couple hundred serious injuries that they go out and try to figure out what went wrong. About 25% of the time that they come out to any site is because of an employee complaint. We've got a few other referrals from the Pollution Control Agency, workers' comp. You know, they go into some place, see something that they don't like, they contact us, we go out there and take a look at it. But the vast majority of the time that they show up on any site in Minnesota is because you are on one of their lists. It has nothing to do with what you have done or your facility in particular. It has to do with what your facility does. It has to do with your industry. Okay, does that make sense to you? So they show up and they say, you're on one of my lists, And it's not because you're Joe's veterinary clinic, it's because you are a veterinary clinic.
How often would they be on the list?
Ah, that's a great question. OSHA generates a list every year. And they have 20 different lists of sorts, and I got some great slides for you to show you in just a minute. Okay, any question of why they show up? Now, OSHA is a lot like the police. They need probable cause to come to your facility. And so the probable cause is imminent danger, a complaint, a referral, or because you are on one of their lists. All right, who can complain to OSHA? Only a current employee can complain. If an employee gets fired, goes home, calls up the OSHA office and says, yeah, Joe's veterinary clinic is an awful place to work. And they don't have any personal protective equipment, and they throw darts at you when you're not, when you come in late, and they don't have authority to complain. The OSHA enforcement won't take the complaint from them because they're not a current employee. So when somebody complains to OSHA, they have to sign a form that says, yes, this is indeed, this is the problem, and I wasn't an employee at the time that I contacted OSHA. Okay, sometimes OSHA enforcement will take non-formal complaints. Those are people that don't work there anymore, or they're people that never work there. But what they do is they write the stuff down and they mail it out to you and ask you to respond to it. So they'll say somebody complained about not having any gloves that are acid resistant and they have to work with acid all the time. And they call that into OSHA enforcement and they say, sorry, you can't complain formally, but this is what we'll do. We're gonna write that down. So they write it down, send it off to you and ask you to respond to it. And if you say, oh yeah, we got plenty of gloves. This person got fired because of this and that and that. You don't have to say why you fired them. You could just say that, yeah, we have this stuff and and it basically goes away. The routine inspections, we call them target inspections or scheduled inspections. What OSHA does get the most bang for their buck is they have very limited resources. They have 50 or 60 inspectors, and there are 150,000 different employers in Minnesota. And so they generate lists of places that they want to go to based on what you guys do. Okay, so when they generate the list, they do it by NAICS code. But you know what a NAICS code is? North American Industrial Classification System. There are like 10,000 different types of industries and businesses in the United States, and each particular type of industry has a 6-digit number. And so veterinary services is 541940. Okay, you have to remember that. Okay, the biggest list that they have is this Bureau of Labor Statistics incident rate list. Okay, these are all NAICS numbers. X's means that it doesn't matter what number that you put in there. Doesn't really matter. This one here is metal fabrication. Basically, make anything. You start out with a 339110, or it doesn't matter what the last 3 digits are. Making stuff. You're on a Bureau of Labor Statistics list, and what they do is they take all the manufacturers, all the companies with these numbers, put them in a big basket, just like the lottery. Pick out about 10% of them, and those are the places that they want to visit for the year. what you will notice is that you guys aren't on the list. That's a good thing. Okay, got lots of other lists. These are all the target lists that OSHA has. Okay, so basically they have about 25 or so target lists. So for each of these headings here, they take all the employers in those headings, put them in a basket, kick out about 10% of them to go visit every year. So do you see veterinary clinics anywhere on there? No, you're not on their list. Okay, so I went back, did some research on you guys, and I found that from 2014 to 2019, only one veterinary clinic was visited by Minnesota OSHA. So I said, well, being that I have a nationwide audience, I got to pull the rest of the United States into it, and I checked everything from 2014 to 2019 and found that there were 66 inspections done on veterinary clinics. The vast majority of them were complaints. Probably 55 or so were complaints. There were a couple fatalities in there. There are a number of serious injuries and some referrals. And I went through the files, and this is a list of the things that I came up with that veterinary clinics are being written up for. Okay, in looking at this list, you got to be a little leery of it because these are things that people complained about. Okay, when OSHA enforcement comes in on a complaint, they are just looking at the complaint items. Okay, they don't have authority to look at anything else unless they see it. They can't go digging for it. If they walk by it and see it and it's really bad, then they will address it, but they won't dig for it. Does that make sense to you guys? All right. This list is a little bit different than the list that's generated by the routine or the scheduled inspections. Because when you get a routine or scheduled inspection from any OSHA, they're required to look at everything. They look at all your health and safety programs. They walk around, they take a look at all the air and noise type things, all the machines, all the electrical, and anything else that they think is pertinent. Okay, take a look at the top two. They all have to deal with right to know or HAZCOM. HAZCOM is the federal it's the federal health program. We have our own in Minnesota. It's called Minnesota Right to Know. Minnesota Right to Know is a little bit different than HAZCOM because we have a couple extra things in there. We have noise, we have infectious agents, and the other thing that we have in Minnesota is we require annual training, which is not required by federal HAZCOM. Formaldehyde. Federal rule requires that if you have any formaldehyde in a facility that's 1% or greater, you're required to do exposure monitoring. That means all those little containers that you have that you put in samples that you send off to the lab. Guess what? Those contain more than 1% formaldehyde. So you need to do exposure monitoring to make sure that your employees aren't overexposed to formaldehyde. And because of that, you're also required to do some formaldehyde training for your employees. So that's why that one is up there. Chemical labels, you take anything out of an original container, you need to label the new container with what it is and what the hazard is. So if you got a 55-gallon container of acetone in the back and you pump it into little squirt bottles, each squirt bottle should say on there acetone and flammable. Don't actually have to write flammable. You could put on one of the NFPA stickers with the flame. As long as people know that it's acetone and flammable, that's what you need to have. Okay, does that make sense to you guys? So if you guys have like 1,000 little bottles of stuff and it just tells people what's on it, that's not going to be good enough. You got to put the hazard with it.
Only if it's in non-original.
Non-original container, right. Okay, radiation monitoring. Got X-ray machine. You need to monitor your employees for radiation exposure. In Minnesota, what ends up happening is Department of Health has that responsibility, so they do a lot better job than OSHA does and regulating the radiation part of the rules. So if you're following the Minnesota Department of Health rules, you exceed the OSHA rules. But I'm not sure how other health departments work nationwide, so I assume that OSHA in some states has that responsibility. PPE assessment and usage. Basically, this is probably where most of the complaints are coming from. I don't have the right stuff to protect myself. I don't have safety glasses. I don't have the right gloves. And so, you know, people complain to OSHA and OSHA comes out and looks at it and they say, yeah, you guys don't have the right gloves. It is your responsibility to figure out what protective equipment employees need to work safe. There's just a few instances of electrical cords. If this was like a normal scheduled inspection, that one would be up at the top because there's a lot of cords, a lot of cord problems, but you got to look for them. You know, you got to look under tables and, you know, follow stuff through the ceiling. And Minnesota is particularly fond of eye washes. If you have anything caustic, pH of 12 or greater, or anything acidic, or pH of 2 or less, you need to have an eye wash in the facility.
Can you go back there? Can you talk, because you use a lot more formalin jars here versus the formaldehyde. Is there monitoring and stuff that is needed for that, or?
Formalin?
Yep.
Yeah, formalin is 37% formaldehyde.
Okay.
So
it's
it says formalin on the bottle, you're in big trouble.
Still formaldehyde. Still
Yes.
monitoring. Okay.
Yeah, you got to do monitoring.
But our containers say it's 10% formalin.
So that would be 3.7% formaldehyde.
Okay.
So yeah. Basically anything that you're putting a specimen into and sending it off to the lab, it's going to be at least 2% formaldehyde.
For training with formaldehyde, do you need like a written protocol? Is that where you're saying training?
Don't really need a written protocol. What I would do is if that's all you're doing, unscrewing a cap, putting the thing in there, screwing it back on, I would get a formaldehyde fact sheet and talk to people about the evils of formaldehyde for a couple minutes. It's like, don't drink it, don't rub it on your skin, wear gloves, put your splash goggles on, you know, make sure not to get it on you. If you spill a big bottle on you, you know, hold yourself off. I mean, I had literally people in the state that work with formaldehyde in gallons. I mean, they make it up in the 600-gallon tanks. You know, they take a 35-gallon container of formalin and dump it in a 600-gallon tank and dilute it to 600 gallons. And the people are splashing it around. That's actually a good story on that. When I worked at OSHA Enforcement, I had a complaint from a place that, from actually this place, that has a 600-gallon tank of formaldehyde, and it was actually signed by 4 people that basically says that we're getting burned by the formaldehyde that we're working with. And so I was sent out there to investigate it, and so I talked to every single person in the facility, and there's like 15 people. And I asked every single one of them, have you ever been burned by formaldehyde? And here are my responses. Oh yeah, take a look at that. Oh, it's particularly bad if you get it in your eyes. Every single person in the place had gotten burned by formaldehyde. And so, yeah, that was a very good complaint. Yes?
How do you monitor
I do it a couple of different ways. The easy way is I have little badges, kind of like your radiation badges. You clip it on, take it off at the end of the day, send it off, have it analyzed, and find that, yes, because you just unscrewed that cap and screwed that cap on, that they can't find any formaldehyde. Unfortunately, the rules say that if you're working with formaldehyde and 1% or greater, you have to do that. And so the health people from OSHA pick on that. The other way is I have sampling pumps. They're basically glorified aquarium pumps, and they pull air through a hose, and there's little glass ampules, and the glass ampules are filled with a reagent, and as you pull the air through that reagent, it collects the formaldehyde, and then you send it off to be analyzed. So they also have formaldehyde meters too.
Is that
Yes.
like your radiation badges, where you're just supposed to use them all the time for every employee all
No,
or is it just
No.
like sampling period? Like you just put them out to see where you're at for your total exposure?
yeah, the question is, do you have to do it for all employee all the time? No, the answer is no, you don't have to do that at all. You just sample once and show that, yeah, we do this, we unscrew the cap, we're not coming up with any formaldehyde. Now, all employees are exposed to nothing, so we're not gonna worry about it anymore. You just need to have those results on hand to show that you actually did it. Yes?
We had a couple questions from online. Are MSDS stickers required on substances that are put in a container different than the original, or is writing alcohol flammable with a Sharpie adequate?
The answer to one is you can label your secondary containers any way that you want, but the minimum is the name and the hazard. You can take the whole label off the original container if you want. You can use the NFPA diamond and write on there what it is. That will work. You can use the GHS hazard symbols. There's a jillion ways to do it. The important thing to remember is that who is using that stuff needs to know what it is and what the hazard is. Okay? And so the answer to the second question is yes, Sharpie works just great.
And then I have another one. Is there information on monitoring for formaldehyde somewhere?
Yeah. It's everywhere. Every state's consultation program will do it for you for free. So if you just, in Minnesota, you call me up, I will come out and I will monitor for your formaldehyde. If you want me to, I'll do your formaldehyde training at the same time. I've done that oodles of times in veterinary clinics in Minnesota. Consultants are available in every state. You just have to contact them through their state or federal OSHA, depending on who regulates the state. Right around us, Minnesota OSHA regulates Minnesota, South Dakota OSHA regulates South Dakota, Iowa OSHA regulates Iowa, Wisconsin and North Dakota are federal OSHA states. So you'll have federal people that will come out and look at it. But wherever you're at, just contact your consultation program, tell them you want formaldehyde monitoring, and they'll come out and do it. You can do it yourself if you want. You can just type in formaldehyde monitoring equipment and in a search engine, and you'll come up with a list of places that you can buy this stuff from and do it yourself if you want to do that. It's really not brain surgery. The badges that I use, you take the bag, open it up. Right the time you open it up, flip it on the employee. At the end of the day, you take it off, put it in the bag. Right the time that you shut it off, and then send it off to a lab, and they'll tell you how much formaldehyde is in it. Really, some of the easiest sampling that I ever do. Yes?
The training, do you just do that yearly with your annual OSHA training, or do you do it like once when you hire people on and then call it a day?
Just need to do it once. It's not one of the annual required ones.
And then.
That's a good question, because I have a slide at the end that tells you what you have to do annually. Yes?
The eye wash, I was just trying to figure out what requirements, like tools required to have an eye wash. It sounds like, I don't know how to figure out if it'd be better if it's, too acidic or too basic things, but we had one, we're under construction, so it's been removed temporarily, so looking at bottled eye washes, and everything is saying that they're not sufficient, so why bother? So I'm trying to figure out what a solution is in this temporary. I can come talk to you after.
No, OSHA Enforcement in Minnesota thinks that veterinary clinics have something in them that would require an eye wash in every facility. Now, I'm not quite sure that is true, because when I go to places, I look at stuff and I see these little bottles of things. And so I don't see a need for an eye wash. So we kind of think differently. There are portable eye washes that you can buy that meet the ANSI requirements of, they're 6-gallon standalone units, and they're like $300. So they're not prohibitively expensive. And so if you have any question, I would suggest just getting one of them. Those little things that you have on your sinks, where you turn on the hot water and the cold water and pull the thing, that's not an OSHA approved eye wash.
What?
Nope. One hand operation. So. Okay, when OSHA shows up, we're gonna go, hi, I'm with Minnesota OSHA. And pull out their badge. This is actually my OSHA.
You?
This is my OSHA badge, yeah.
This is why we sit in front.
Yeah. Look at that, even have hair.
That's why I was like,
This is kind of an overview of their process. But anyways, really, OSHA shows up. They don't give you any warning. They just say, hi, I'm with Minnesota OSHA. Hope you're not doing anything today. I actually did that once. I said, hi, hope you're not doing anything today or tomorrow or the next day, just to be funny. And I was there for 3 days. So it wasn't real funny to them, but it was a huge place. I can tell you about it because it was an OSHA enforcement inspection, and it was Federal Arms up in Anoka. And so the place is just huge. I mean, there's literally a spot you can stand in there, and the building is in a cross pattern, and you can't see the ends of the building. So there's a lot of stuff in there. They make bullets, a lot of lead, and a lot of things to look at. So anyways, all OSHA enforcement stuff is public record. So you can literally type in the name of your company or any company that you want into the federal OSHA program, and they'll tell you when the inspection was and exactly what the hazards were and what they were cited for and how much it cost them. That's all public information. So when I dug up the 66 inspections, you could have done the same thing. You know, it didn't take any magic there. It didn't take any magic passwords. It's just knowing how to do it. So yeah, they will show up. They'll show you their ID. So make sure it's an OSHA person. Yes.
Going back to the eyewash, if the sync version of eyewash station is not okay, what should we be using? Any suggestions?
Yeah, there's an ANSI standard that spells everything out. There's like 30 things on it. But the bottom line is it's got to have tepid water, one-hand operation, and it's got to provide at least 15 minutes of water. So if you get the portable units, they have 6 gallons, and you pull the caps off on the eyewash, that will provide 15 minutes of water. That's where the 6 gallon, that's why they have 6 gallons in them. But yeah, there's a whole ANSI standard that spells this stuff out. If you're interested, I can send it to you. Yes?
Not related to that, but isn't it not required by the state of Minnesota anymore to wear the radiation monitoring badges that you don't have to wear because our exposure is so low?
I don't know.
It's different for individual clinics.
Yeah, it might be.
Sampling period, and it's based on those results.
Yeah.
Yes, but maybe no.
What I do is when I go to a clinic and I see an X-ray machine, I take a look for the Minnesota Department of Health certification for that year. If you don't have it, then I start asking questions, because they come out and they check on everything, and they're a lot more thorough and particular than we are from OSHA. So I think your answer is right. Yeah, it's up to the individual clinic, but I can't vouch for that because I haven't really looked at radiation for quite some time. When I run into radiation, when I run into X-ray machines, I run into X-ray machines that are, trying to look at metal that's joints that are welded on like boilers on power plants. And now those are X-ray machines. They actually close the whole building down and actually run these machines when there's nobody in them. They'll ask for the senior management. And so the option that you have is to let them in or don't let them in. You don't have to let OSHA in. But if you don't let them in, they're going to come in with a search warrant. So. But you do have the option of not letting them in. They'll do an opening conference. They'll sit down with you and say, I'm with Minnesota OSHA. Here's why I'm here. And for you guys, it's going to be a complaint. And so on a complaint, it's going to be listed exactly what the issues are that they are going to look at. They don't have any authority to look at anything besides what's on that complaint unless it's in plain sight. Yes?
Another gal was asking, are we audited before we are fined?
Oh, yeah. Yes. And we'll talk about, that's a couple slides down here. They're going to tell you what to expect. Like when I go to a place and I expect to do ear and noise sampling, I'm going to tell them, I'm probably going to be here later on and I'm going to sample for noise. The complaint is this, but has something to do with noise. I'm coming here to do a preliminary today and I will be back to sample for noise. They're going to see if there's any other OSHA open cases. OSHA sometimes doesn't communicate well, and you might have something else going on there with another OSHA person. Not that has ever happened to me more than half a dozen times. Hi, I'm with Minnesota OSHA. Oh, are you with the other guy? What other guy? Oh, another guy showed up 2 hours ago. Oh, okay. Oh, let me talk to him. They're going to check to see if you're the only employer on the site. If you have subcontractors in there painting and doing construction, those are not your employees. So they're going to check to see who your employees are and who they have authority to look at. And then if you have a union facility, they're going to invite the union to participate in it. Going to look at your OSHA 300 logs. Everyone's required to do that no matter what state you're in. They're going to look at your 300 logs. Those are your OSHA injury logs for the last 3 years. You're only required to keep them if you have 10 or more employees. Okay, so if you have 9 employees, you don't have to keep them. Yes?
What if you recently got more than 10 employees? So the previous years won't count before you had.
Yep, just start counting once you hit 10. Okay, in Minnesota, if you have 20 or more employees, you have to report your injuries to federal OSHA every year. And I got another slide on that too.
Can I ask you something on that?
Yes,
We fall into that, and I've reported before, and they said, you don't need to report this, like a cat fighting, they don't care about those. So then I stopped reporting.
yeah, no, you're required to report.
That's the problem I have, every time I call OSHA, I get different answers.
The federal system has, they implemented this 2 years ago, and the system that hadn't really worked yet properly. I actually had a question about about that. There's actually a handout that should be in your bag that tells you how to do it, when to do it. But in Minnesota, you're required to do it. I would start right now. When it comes down to next year and you're required to report it, give it a shot. If it doesn't work, this is what you do: is you just take a print screen of your computer screen that says, yeah, we couldn't get this information in, and put it in your file. You're required to check your AWARE program. That's your accident and injury reduction program. That's specific to Minnesota. You don't need one. Some of you still might have one. They look at your bloodborne pathogen program. Are you guys required to have one? No, you guys can read. You don't need to have a bloodborne pathogen program because you're not exposed to human blood. Okay, they'll take a look at your respiratory protection program. If anybody's wearing respirators, besides like the filtering face piece ones, those are the paper ones with the rubber straps. I actually have one example. One of these, you do not need a respiratory protection program for one of these if they're being used voluntarily. Okay, if it's loud, you're gonna need a hearing conservation program. I actually was at one veterinary place where the kennel was really, really loud. And the people that actually worked in the kennel part would have needed to have a hearing conservation program because of all the barking dogs. None of this stuff will, okay, we got the exposure monitoring, formaldehyde, we talked about that. You'll look at any other programs that you have. You need a forklift for the big animals, and you're gonna need to have a forklift training program. But anyways, in the opening conference, they're gonna tell you about a whole bunch of things, including the general duty clause. The general duty clause basically says that it's your responsibility to have a safe and healthy workplace, and that if they find something serious, that's seriously wrong in your place, that's not covered by OSHA rules, they will make up a rule to cover that. So seriously, they will take a look at like a manual or other people's guidance. They're allowed to interview employees, they take notes, they take pictures, and they will not give you any of their notes or pictures. So if you're following them around, take your own notes, take your own pictures. And I'm not gonna worry about trade secrets because you don't have to worry about that. So they'll walk around, talk to employees, take measurements. At the end of the day, they'll tell you all the bad stuff. They'll give you some ideas on how to fix things. They'll explain their penalty procedure and your contestation rights. So we'll cover that kind of quickly here. The citations are based on how bad it is, how long an employee is exposed to it, how many employees there are, whether you do it as bad or not, and whether you can actually fix it. Then they fine you. Money goes to Minnesota OSHA. That money is actually transferred to the workers' comp penalty fund, or special fund, sorry. So OSHA doesn't get the money, so there's no reason for an OSHA person to write a hazard item except that may hurt somebody in the facility and they want you to fix it. Okay, and the stuff comes certified mail. If you ever have dealings with OSHA, you have 20 days to contest the citations. And just because you contest them doesn't mean that you don't agree with it, but you can contest it so that you can talk about it with them. You can negotiate a better deal than a penalty. A lot of times, at least in Minnesota, if you go and contest it and say, well, I'd rather take this money and fix this and that, and it will give you some of that back to fix things. They're not all mean. And then you have to fix the stuff. So they may come back and check on it. So sure to fix it. If you don't fix it, that's when things get really bad. That's when the big penalties come out. I once wrote up a hazard item, and it was $700 for missing a switch plate cover, like on the switches by that door right there. And so I came back like 3 months later, and they still didn't have one. And the manager said, well, I went to the hardware store, and they didn't have one. And first word out of my mouth, I can't repeat her. And then I ended up having to increase the penalty to $7,000. You know how much that little plastic cover costs? 19 cents. And you know how long it takes you to install that thing? Yeah. What do? Plan ahead. Just come up with a plan. When OSHA shows up, they're not going to call you ahead of time, so be ready for them. Ask them why they're there. If it's an employee complaint, ask the time that the employee complained. You can check on whether it's a recent employee or not, or somebody that actually works there. They won't tell you who it is, but they have the ability to look at who it is and look at your paperwork to see if they were actually working there when they complained. All right, keep all your training records up to date. And what you want on your training records is who did the training, what was in the training, who did the training, and who attended. So those 4 things. If you got a PowerPoint, that's fine. If it's on a computer system, that's fine. It doesn't have to be hard copies.
How long do you need to keep that? How long do you need to keep those?
I would keep them for 3 years. Personally, I don't care. I want to see training records I want to know that the people know what they're doing. And if they were trained 5 years ago and they know what they're doing, that's fine. If they're trained last week and they don't know what they're doing, I'm writing a hazard item that says ineffective training. So to me, it's just paperwork stuff. I talk with the people. Get some guidance on who to call. If OSHA shows up, who do you call in your facility? Right? Do you let them in? And what do? You follow them around, take your own pictures, take your own notes. All right? The reporting requirements for Minnesota anyways, well, actually nationwide. If you have fatality, you have to notify OSHA within 8 hours. If you have a serious injury in Minnesota, you have to report all work-related amputations. That's as little as slicing it off the top of your finger with like a meat slicer. They consider that an amputation now. Loss of an eye or anyone that's sent to the hospital, inpatient hospital. Here are the phone numbers in Minnesota up on top. The bottom number, that's a federal OSHA number. For those that are in federal states, that's the number that you call. After hours in Minnesota, you call the federal number and they'll send the information to us. in Minnesota. Okay, if you ever want to call OSHA, this is the OSHA general number, this in Minnesota, 284-5050. That's actually, yeah, that's the general number. The other one underneath that is the toll-free number. That'll actually get you into the building. So if you want to, if you don't know the number of the Department of Labor and Industry, you can call this, either one of these two numbers. That'll get you in a building. We could transfer you to where you want to go. Okay, we talked about that. You got the handout for how to go ahead and do this. So that should be in your bag. Programs that you have to update every year, AWARE and bloodborne pathogen. You don't need them, so you don't have anything to update. Training to be done every year. Bloodborne pathogen, you don't have one, you don't need to do that. Right to know, only in Minnesota. Okay, so every year you need to have a document that says you've done training, right to know training in Minnesota. Some other things, people are required to wear respirators. Then you got to fit test them on a respirator every year. Required, if you test your employee's hearing, if it's loud, you got to test their hearing every year. And what would an OSHA presentation be without a tasteless cartoon at the very end? Yes.
So you said you were gonna go over what should be in our OSHA training. What do you want us to be done over every year with our employees or part of our unit?
Your yearly training, you can put in there whatever you want. So you could just grab a safety data sheet out of your book and say, today we're going to talk about chloroform. And here are the evils of chloroform, and spend 10 or 15 or just a couple of minutes talking about what's in the safety data sheet. Your initial training, nationwide, you need to teach people how to use the safety data sheet, the 16 different categories of the safety data sheet. They need to know the pictograms. Those are 9 symbols that tell you what the hazard is. They need to know what precautionary statements are, like keep away from flames. Then they have hazard statements. And then they have a couple signal words, warning and danger. So that's what is required in your right to know training. Oh, actually, that's not even right to know. That's all HAZCOM stuff. So nationwide, everybody needs to know that. Yes?
I know you had mentioned it a little bit before, but just to be clear, we don't need AWARE manuals?
Nope.
But they used to be a thing? Or does that change?
It changes every 5 years.
Okay.
What OSHA does is every 5 years, they evaluate which industries are high hazard industries, and sometimes that changes. And so I'm not aware that veterinary clinics have ever been on the list, but.
So if we have them, we just keep them, or do we just get rid of them?
I think the AWARE program is probably one of the best programs that you have if you actually do this stuff. Because it requires you to look at what your hazards are, dog bites and cat scratches, and figure out ways to get rid of them. Or it could be ergonomic stuff, we're bending over for these 150-pound dogs and trying to pick them up and da-da-da. So it has you look at the hazards in your, specific to your facility, and how to get rid of the hazards.
So when should respirators be worn?
Well, the OSHA answer is they're required to protect the employee from an overexposure to something. So for a veterinary clinic, that pretty much means never. So if you're concerned, you can provide respirators for employee comfort or employee concerns.
Can we do that when we tell them that it's a concern of theirs and not OSHA?
Yes, yes. And so there's a difference in the respiratory protection program for required use of respirators and for those people that just want to use them. The required use of respirators, you got to fit test people to make sure that it actually works. Whereas the required, you really don't have an overexposure concern, so it's not that critical that they don't work or fit right. It's a comfort thing. Yes?
Is there a standard right to know training? Like, is that yearly we should be doing the right to know training? Is it, I mean, I have a booklet, I don't know how old it is. Like, where would we go and see the most current stuff?
For the annual right to know training, you can provide employees with whatever information that you want. I would go through your facility and find what are the nasty things that you have and just take a safety data sheet and just discuss it. I like okay, I get the time out here. I like carbon monoxide myself in the fall time because everybody knows what carbon monoxide is and that's when it becomes an issue. But anyways, I will.